what can't they do at this point? Like, they're going from Gone Girl and the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo to an animated film. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I am Molly, and in today's video I am going to be talking about all of the films that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross of 9 Inch Nails have composed. So basically, I'm just a total nerd for 9 Inch Nails and movies in general, so I figured why not just go through and watch all of the movies that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross have done the soundtrack for, considering I love 9 Inch Nails music and I just like watching movies in general. So I figured why not make this little video and kind of just give my thoughts and opinions on all of these films. So the first film we're going to be talking about is The Social Network. This one came out in 2010. It's directed by David Fincher, and this is a great dramatic movie, and the soundtrack really just amps up everything in this movie, in my opinion. It almost has this interesting electronic, almost arcade game-like sound to it that somehow just captures everything that's happening in the movie. In my opinion, it's just like Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross playing around with a bunch of cool sounds. Very interesting for a film, especially for dramas, have more of a traditional, like, orchestral sound to them and makeup. And this one with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross doing it, it has more of like that 9 Inch Nails style, electronic kind of industrial darkness to it. And it really works so well in this film. It's like kind of playful on the surface with a lot of the sounds and everything that they use, but there's like this underlying menacing tone. But a great example of this is the track that opens this film up. I think it's called Hand Covers Bruise. I could be wrong. It just has like, there's this underlying menacing quality, which it just kind of brings a little bit of darkness to the score of this film, which I think really enhances the storyline and what's going on with the characters. But yeah, The Social Network, this is just a really like fast-paced drama, and the score just really emphasizes that. So yeah, the first movie, The Social Network, I love this film, and I think much of the reason why is the soundtrack. I love listening to the soundtrack. I can just listen to the music from this movie without watching the movie and thoroughly enjoy it. Next up is the 2011 film The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Again, this is a David Fincher directed movie, and again, this is a great film. I love watching it. I know that all of the attention for the most part was on The Social Network for the score, but Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did just as good a job, if not a better job, with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. The soundtrack that they created for this film is gorgeous. It somehow just perfectly encapsulates the setting and the coldness of this movie. There's a very isolated feeling that you have watching this film. You kind of get that with the main character that Rooney Mara plays. There's kind of just this isolated feeling about her character, like I think she feels like an outsider. She doesn't feel like she really fits with anyone, especially if you've seen the film, you know how it ends. It's like that feeling of being completely isolated, and it's again just that feeling amplified by the soundtrack. It works gorgeously well. And then the setting, it's somewhere in Scandinavia, so it's like a very cold, dark, barren landscape. There's a lot of snow, and the soundtrack just has a cold feeling that really heightens that sense of starkness, desolation, coldness. So yeah, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, again, fantastic movie, fantastic soundtrack. I think, honestly, I prefer this soundtrack over The Social Network. I don't really want to make comparisons because they're both fantastic, but yeah, just great, great score. So the third movie that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did the soundtrack for is Gone Girl. This is a 2014 film, again directed by David Fincher. This is just a trio that works friggin' great. But Gone Girl is just a fantastic thriller. I'm going to reiterate myself here, but the soundtrack just enhances this movie so well. The best word I can use to describe the soundtrack for this film is just chilling. Again, you kind of have that underlying menacing quality, like something's building up. Off the top of my head, the scenes from Gone Girl where I think the soundtrack are just so good are right as the film opens, the song that is playing is just chilling. And then, spoiler alert by the way, if you haven't seen Gone Girl, you might not want to watch this part, but the scene where Amy Dunn is slitting Desi's throat on the bed in his weird futuristic cabin in the woods, whatever you want to call it. The soundtrack on that scene is so loud and intense. Again, it just elevates this film. This score also, I think it's a little bit more stripped back than the scores for, The Social Network, you've got more electronic stuff going on, more playful sounds. And then The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is a little bit more louder, aggressive. Gone Girls is very stripped back. It's more subtle. That scene where she's like slitting his throat it gets so intense, but there's moments of intensity that just make this soundtrack so good. So next up is Peter Berg's 2016 film Patriot's Day. And this is actually a movie, I watched it when it first came out and had no idea that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did the soundtrack for this film. So I rewatched it and it's very subtle. There are definitely telltale moments in this movie though where you'll think to yourself, oh, that does sound very Nine Inch Nails-ish. Like you can hear moments of it peeking through. Again, kind of like Gone Girl, it's more kind of ominous, chilling. There's moments of action in this film where the soundtrack definitely is more amplified, but I found this soundtrack to be really interesting compared to the first 3 David Fincher films that they did the soundtrack for. It's way more subdued, but it kind of works. For this film, it works really well. Yeah, this is, if you know Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did the soundtrack for this film, you can definitely tell, but without knowing, it's so subtle that it's not as noticeable as the other 3. But that's not a bad thing at all. I think with this particular film, it works really well. Next up is the Jonah Hill directed movie Mid-90s. This one was released in 2018. But this is a short little film. I think it's like an hour and 20 minutes. Just about this kid growing up in LA amongst, he befriends a group of skateboarders and just him kind of finding himself and his own identity, and just a great little coming-of-age film. Super surprising one to have Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross doing the score for, but it works. It does work. And this is a movie, their score is not in it a whole lot. If you look up the soundtrack for Mid-90s on Spotify, I think there's like 4 songs. So it's a very short soundtrack, but when you do hear the music, it works well with this film. Again, just a surprising one. Not one you would expect the band members of Nine Inch Nails to be making a soundtrack for, but there you have it. Up next is Suzanne Byer's 2018, I guess you'd call it psychological horror film, Bird Box. And I have in general mixed feelings on this film. However, I think the soundtrack is great, especially considering that all of the actors are going through this film with their eyes covered or blindfolded. I feel like the soundtrack is extra important because it amplifies what the actors are hearing. I think this one is almost a bit more acoustic sounding. Like if you compare it, for example, to The Social Network, there's way more electronic sounds and digital sounding stuff, if that makes sense. But yeah, there's a lot of scenes in Bird Box where like they're in the woods or they're on the boat in the river, and there's more natural elements to this movie. And I think Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did a great job of kind of mimicking that almost with the soundtrack and putting in more organic, natural sounding elements, but yet still having that kind of experimental Nine Inch Nails side to the sound as well. Great score, another good film. I definitely recommend checking this one out if you haven't. I have kind of mixed feelings on it. I think it goes over the top at certain points, but overall, good film and even better soundtrack. Okay, so next up is Waves. This movie came out in 2019 and it is directed by Trey Edward Schultz. This film I had not even heard of until I was looking up movies composed by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. But Waves is a phenomenal movie in my opinion. The acting is fantastic. Everyone in this film does a great job. The lighting, the editing, the directing, and the music is phenomenal. But the original score for Waves, created by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, just pairs beautifully with the lighting and the setting used in this film, which are major components of Waves. If you watch Waves, the lighting and the setting and everything of this film are like half of what makes this movie great. And the soundtrack just pairs beautifully with that. And also the other songs that are not part of the original score that are used on this film pair great with the original score made by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross as well. It's just a great film. It gets everything right. And I think what I love about the score is, again, it just enhances all of the sensory details in this movie. And just through the music alone, you can get the feeling of everything that the characters go through. But anyway, that's all I'm going to say about Waves. Watch it if you haven't, and definitely give the soundtrack a listen to. It's phenomenal. Up next is the 2020 film Mank. Again, this one's directed by David Fincher, and then we've got Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross again doing the score. And I was a little disappointed by this film. I will admit I'm not super familiar with the background or anything of Citizen Kane, so maybe that's why it just didn't resonate with me as much. I didn't really get into this film, I'll be honest, but the score is great. It does work well with this film, but I just wanted to quickly mention Mank in this video because, again, I think it's a great testament to the range of Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross and the music that they can make for films, because this one's so different compared to a lot of their previous work. You know, this isn't an action movie, it's a black and white biographical drama, and yet the soundtrack still works. It's still good. So yeah, I didn't love Mank as a film overall, but the soundtrack's great. And last up is the animated film Soul. This one also came out in 2020. This movie's fantastic. I'm not even a huge animation lover. I don't watch a lot of animated movies, but I loved Soul. It's a great little film, and we finally have an animated movie with the soundtrack made by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. And again, like, what can't they do at this point? Like, they're going from Gone Girl and the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo to an animated film. But yeah, fantastic score. The scenes in like the other world, heaven, whatever you want to call it, in Soul, there's like this futuristic sound, outer spacey sound that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross capture in their soundtrack that just make this film great. They elevate the scenes, and it's just really enjoyable. It's a great movie. And yeah, as of right now, these are all of the movies that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross have made the original soundtrack for. So I just wanted to go through and talk about all of them because all of these films are great. All of these soundtracks are great. Like I said at the beginning, I'm a total sucker for anything Nine Inch Nails related and film related in general, and I love movie soundtracks in general. So I thought I would just make this little video and talk about all of these films. Go check these movies out if you haven't seen any of them, and I guess I'm just gonna wrap this up here. I hope you all enjoyed watching this, and as usual, stay tuned and I will see you all next time.